Welcome, Dr. Tarver. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Kelvin. I really want to extend my gratitude to the BioUtah board, the program committee, and all of you all in the audience for the invitation to join you virtually today. As you all know, 2025 has been quite an eventful year, filled with many transitions and changes here at the agency. We've experienced changes not only with personnel, but we've also had changes in policies, our organizational structural changes, as well as some technological changes that came online over the course of the year. And what it really has done is has inspired us to think creatively and differently, help us to challenge assumptions we may have had, and try to look at things a little bit differently, taking a more nimble and agile approach. While all that change is happening, there are some things that have stayed the same, and that is our unfaltering focus on our public health mission. You've heard us say it before that CDRH is very much grounded on two pillars, which are safety and innovation. And we cannot really realize true innovation if we're not still safeguarding patients. And at the same time, we can't provide safety to public health if we're not cultivating an innovative pipeline that allows for better ways for us to care for people. And our efforts that we've had underway also have inherent to them the importance of timeliness, because when we're talking about people's health, every day counts and time matters. I believe this is a goal that's shared by many of you in the audience, since Utah has a very prominent footprint in the medical device space. And today I'd like to cover a couple of topics that I'm sure are front of mind for you. And I'm going to start first with some slides to just highlight a couple of touch points with respect to the medical device user fee amendments and our workforce. The next slide shows that the MDUFA 5 agreement actually provides some critical resources that support important program enhancements, such as greater engagement with developers of innovative technologies, helps to promote the use of real-world evidence to evaluate medical devices, broaden our international harmonization efforts, and expanded opportunities for patient perspectives to become an integral part of the medical device evaluation process. Over the course of MDUFA 5, we've had a number of accomplishments that are shown on the next slide. That is converting the accreditation scheme for conformity assessment, also called ASCA, from a pilot into a full-blown program that is sustainable, issuing guidance documents on pre-submission and deficiency letters, developing and providing training to our review staff, as well as continuing to provide IT enhancements to improve the quality of the submission process journey for industry, which includes our eStar updates as well as our customer collaboration portal. The next slide is going to walk you a little bit through our performance. And as you can see, as of September 1st in 2025, on the next slide, we have met or are on track to meet key review goals for submissions. Our performance continues to be positive despite the growing demands on our organization. And over the past year, as I alluded to at the outset, we've had a number of personnel changes, which include many individuals in leadership roles, as well as some critical staff members that have left the agency. But this chart shows the true testament of the fortitude of our staff to be able to carry the baton forward. And it has not been easy to accomplish these goals with fewer hands to help. It's placed more work on our staff, and we're working to help spread that out more evenly across our organization. It goes without saying that we are really looking forward to be able to bring on additional experts to aid in some of these submission reviews. Nonetheless, our staff are committed to the mission of CDRH and are working to ensure that there are safe and effective medical devices available for us all. We can close out the slides, and I'll just touch on two big initiatives at the agency right now. And I think we can open up for questions afterwards. Home as a Healthcare Hub is one initiative that has brought multiple sectors together to help empower patients to manage their health at home. We all can acknowledge that the healthcare system is overwhelmed. In fact, according to the American Medical Association, the United States is facing a shortage of between 37,000 and 124,000 physicians by the end of 2034. And that dearth is almost certain to be exacerbated by a rising rate of physician burnout, as well as early retirements. Because a lot of the physicians right now are, about 45% of them are age 45 years and older. So we really do have an expertise challenge that's going to be facing this nation that is as amplified in rural locations. We're also seeing closure of many healthcare facilities. And at the same time, 60% of US adults, according to the CDC, have at least one chronic disease. That's 129 million adults. And we haven't even begun to talk about children. To meet this pending healthcare challenge, it's really critical that we increase access to care, improve outcomes, and reduce costs by shifting our focus to a more person centered care that is accessible closer to home. That means at home treatments, tests, monitoring devices. All of these things may help foster better health and well being by putting patients back in the driver's seat. Our initiative was to imagine the home of patients who are living with chronic diseases, particularly diabetes in our prototype. And we have that virtual reality environment called LilyPad on our website for developers to walk in the proverbial shoes of the patient, experience what it's like for them, and better imagine how a device that they may be designing could fit into the daily lives of a patient in a more seamless way that encourages utilization and integration into their daily life to help improve healthcare outcomes. We're also expanding our human device interaction research lab to enable a more integrated ecosystem of health technologies in the home through foundational, cross-disciplinary regulatory science development and standards advancement, particularly in the area of interoperability. And I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about TAP. I'm sure many of you have heard about the Total Product Lifecycle Advisory Program that came about as part of our commitment under MDUFA 5. In this program, breakthrough devices are the focus, and it is across certain offices of health technology. And just this year, we expanded to include STEP, which are the Safe Technology Program devices. Our goal for this program is to try to accelerate the evidentiary understanding for devices so that they know what patient input, provider input, payer input, as well as regulatory input may be necessary as they're developing the evidence generation plans and raising resources in order to carry out those plans. It's really a program that's designed to avert the valley of death for many different medical devices. Engagement topics for our TAP advisors can include topics such as how does the design of your device work with patients if they are the primary utilizers of that particular device? How does it fit into clinical workflows if it is a provider-focused device? And does it fit within those workflows? And what changes might need to take place in order to do that? What are the outcomes that are important to both of those communities, as well as the payer? And how do you design your study in a way to collect that important information early on so that by the time you get a regulatory decision, you are primed for a reimbursement and coverage decision as well? The TAP pilot assessment will be published at the end of January, and a sneak peek into that data shows us that 98% of the almost 100 TAP participants are incredibly satisfied with the program. They got the information they needed at the time they needed it, which is exactly the point of the program. Now, while I'm giving you just a limited snapshot of the work that we have been doing here at CDRH, I hope you see that through change, we are continuing to be in relentless pursuit of our mission of protecting and promoting public health, facilitating innovation while ensuring safety. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tarver. So while I'm giving the audience an opportunity to gather their questions and come to the microphones, let me just ask a couple of follow-up questions to your program. The TAP program certainly is getting some good traction. Is it your anticipation that under MDUFA 6 that program will be continued? Is that the agency's perspective at this point?
During the public meeting that we had in August, where the MDUFA program kicked off, we heard very loudly from both patient groups, provider groups, the AMA and others about the importance of this program and them being brought in early into the conversation, being a benefit to them too, as well as to the industry. You know, we are all about fostering a good quality journey for medical device developers, and this program has helped to facilitate that. So we're hoping to build on that in MDUFA 6 by ensuring that that journey remains productive and efficient for companies.
That could be a great asset for companies that are working under that program, so I'm glad to hear that. Also, we talked a little bit about how healthcare is moving more into the home setting. and trying to push more of it into the home setting, which obviously is a positive trajectory. The question is, what is FDA doing to perhaps facilitate that? I know right now, if you're going to go over the counter with products, sometimes that can be a much more rigorous process. Are there steps being taken to perhaps facilitate home use of devices that become almost more over the counter? Maybe this is the wrong term, but liberalizing a little bit the process by which that's being done.
There's definitely been a movement towards more devices moving to an over-the-counter kind of or a home use approach. I mean, you probably have seen that some of our decisions over the past year have been offering technologies to patients in a manner that's at home, whether it's certain types of viral testing, certain types of collection of samples that can be sent to laboratories, whether it is expanding the use of continuous glucose monitors from type 1 diabetes to type 2 diabetes to now over the counter for anyone who would like to use it, even looking to extend into children. So we are trying to cultivate a pipeline that will facilitate that. We know that interoperability is one of the challenges that some folks have mentioned that has been a challenge for them, and we're looking at that. And then what are the evidentiary requirements to help us to ensure that the device is safe? We want a reasonable assurance of that and effective at accomplishing its goal. And so we are exploring whether it's in the diagnostic as well as in some of the therapeutic spaces, some of those technologies being able to be used at home. While some elements of it might still be interpreted by a healthcare provider at a distance, like the ultrasound, fetal ultrasound device that we authorized just recently, or other technologies where the data is being collected at home and being relayed to a provider in a remote location. We are really trying to see how do we just ensure that people can have the technologies they need as effectively and efficiently as possible. And it may not always be over the counter, it may be home use in general.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a question. Please state your name and Dr. Tarver can hear you through the microphone.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Tarver, for being with us today. My name is Spencer Walker. I'm with the Center for Medical Innovations at the University of Utah. And I want to ask kind of an administrative question with what's going on at the CDRH that you just mentioned a minute ago. For example, what is the staffing level right now at the CDRH, say, compared to a year ago? And how long do you expect to continue to add additional time to the reviews, for example, adding extra days to like special 510Ks and traditional 510Ks?
So we are still meeting our performance review goals, as you saw on the slide that I alluded to. So we are on track for that. I would say in terms of staffing, we've had some changes. I mean, clearly you all have read the same periodicals that we all have. There have been folks who have left for various different personnel reasons, whether it's early retirement or other vehicles. But we also have a very clear, robust plan for hiring as well, and have identified a number of different candidates. You probably have seen some of the job postings that we've had placed since the summertime with respect to engineers and clinicians and statisticians and some of those real critical roles that are necessary for reviewing device submissions. So we are actively working to bring people on board. Obviously, we have a little bit of a pause at the moment given the current status of funding for the government, but we will be pursuing that as soon as we are able.
Thank you.
So could I just elaborate on that just a little bit, Dr. Tarver? We've heard of layoffs at FDA. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how layoffs have affected different segments of FDA? Because I think maybe there's a perception that maybe reviewers have been laid off, there's been reduction in forces in certain areas. Can you maybe clarify that a little bit for us?
Sure. So some of the reductions in forces was focused on, that effort was focused on consolidating certain services at the agency. So some of our human resource functions and communication functions and FOIA requests, things of that sort, were consolidated at the agency level. So that led to, obviously, when you're doing consolidation, there are some people who are released from the government at that time. But there's normal attrition that happens too, and maybe some accelerated attrition where people retired earlier than they had previously planned to retire. So we've had lost for various different reasons. I think our focus now is on moving past that stage and trying to identify the talent that we're going to need in order to effectively review the submissions that are coming in-house. I will say that we've had a significant number of applicants for the positions that we've had posted, and we're really excited to be able to bring those folks on board. Now, one thing I would share with your audience, as we are onboarding people, it's a lot of new people to bring on board, so there will be some learning curve, and we ask you to be patient with our staff and let us know if there are challenges in the review process as folks are learning how to do a review of a regulatory submission.
So it would be fair to say that most of the support services, most of the consolidations in support services, not in the core functions, but even so, with the loss of some of that, it still will have an impact on the core functions of reviewing, as you just indicated.
Absolutely. I think, one of the things that folks think of reviewers as a discrete entity, and I'll share I was a reviewer at one point in time. I was an ophthalmologist, so I was a clinical reviewer on many files, and an epidemiologist, so I got pulled in two directions. And while I was looking at clinical trial data, looking at IDEs, and helping look at post-approval studies that are focused in the ophthalmology space, there was an MDR. I would often get pulled in to interpret how clinically meaningful that outcome was. If there was the shortage, I was the person often speaking with the clinicians and the patients about that particular topic. The challenge that I think people don't always appreciate is that as the reviewer, I am the consultant, but what allows me to come back to your submission is all the other staff that help to carry those things through to a completion. If there is a shortage, while I may have that initial conversation, there's a lot of other steps that have to happen in order for that shortage to be mitigated. And so we need staff that can do those kinds of functions. I may give input on an MDR, but in order for someone to do a full analysis of that entire constellation of NDRs and determine is it a true signal, there's staff that have to do that type of work. And so while folks are very focused on reviewers, I would encourage you to think about it being more of a balanced view, that in order for reviewers to actually do that critical work, there's other people that also have to raise their hands to help meet our public health mission.
Great, thank you. Question over here.
Hi, Dr. Tarver. I'm Evan Unger. I'm CEO of Microvascular Therapeutics. I'm a radiologist, and I've developed 3 FDA-approved contrast agents. A couple years ago, there was a lawsuit, and federal judge ruled that contrast agents should be regulated as devices rather than drugs. Yet, when it went to the PDUFA committee, the fee schedule, they established that contrast agents would remain as drugs. I feel strongly that contrast agents should be regulated as devices rather than drugs, and this would encourage innovation and lower the cost. I just wanted to ask you, what are the chances that contrast agents can then again be regulated as devices, as I believe they should, and is there a consideration or movement to do that?
My understanding, they remain regulated as drugs based on that decision.
So you don't see any movement to change them to be devices?
Not to my awareness at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Evan.
Hello, my name is Siv Ghaffari. I'm the VP of Quality and Regulatory Affairs for Turner Innovations. So you were here last year, and you were asked as the new administration was taking office, were there any concerns? And your answer was, we are mission-driven, and we're focused on the mission, and we continue to be. So a year has passed. I'd like to ask, has your mission changed in any way? And that drive, and what's new a year into the new administration?
We're still mission driven. I think you saw Dr. McCary put forth and I think a JAMA article laying out some of the priorities for the agency. And some of those priorities are directly aligned with work that we have been doing and continue to do here in CDRH, whether it is the focus on real world evidence and how that data from real world experience can be leveraged as evidence in our regulatory decision making. We have been moving forward with doing that. And we've had 90 examples in the past of how real world data has impacted our pre-market decisions, and we've got over 50 of them now as additional examples in this past year. We also have been very much focused on artificial intelligence-enabled medical devices, which is, one of the big innovative areas I know the speaker before me had alluded to. Well, we had an advisory committee just recently that focused on generative AI for digital mental health devices. And so it really is looking at where's technology going and how can we be best prepared to foster that technology coming on market and ensuring it's safe. And at the same time, making sure that people have access to technologies that could extend care into regions that often go without care. So those are the things that we are continuing to explore and cultivate, and that hasn't changed. And to your question of are we still mission focused? Absolutely. We are definitely mission focused, and our staff, the reason why we are able to meet those performance goals that I alluded to is because of that focus. I think it permeates every single person that has rolled up their sleeves here at the agency.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question.
Hi, Dr. Tarver. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jacob Morrill from Seek Laboratories here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And my question today is, as more and more companies are starting to adopt AI into their development processes, I'm wondering how the CDRH is going to be viewing that, especially in terms of using AI in design verification, validation activities, and especially in your role as a former reviewer, how you would view adopting AI into those systems to prove safety and efficacy for products.
Now, there's obviously a lot happening now in how we regulate AI-enabled technologies. One of the things that we've recognized is that there is a lot of new entrants into the space that may not be familiar with the regulation of medical devices. They may be from the consumer tech or other industries. And so one of the things that we realized early on that was really important is that we provide resources that are accessible for folks to identify what guidances are important, what are all the resources that are available to inform their application and process, as well as encouraging companies, particularly for some of these newer AI-enabled applications, to come have an engagement and orientation meeting with us early on. We have found that when folks come in for those kinds of informational discussions, it allows us to ask real-time questions, get a better understanding of that technology, and then it helps us be better prepared to provide a more efficient review process for that particular technology or device. I do think, though, that we always regulate with a risk-based paradigm, right? We are always going to look at how do the risks of the technology impact the appropriate considerations in terms of what kind of evidence we need to see and what are some ways to mitigate risk. And I think, depending on, there's a huge continuum with AI-enabled devices, whether they're in the diagnostic realm, are they being introduced into a therapeutic realm, are they going to be used autonomously or also with a healthcare provider that's a skilled provider? There's such a big breadth of applications, and so it really will depend on how that technology is being launched and anticipated to be used once it's authorized.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Megan Hanrahan. I'm a physical therapist. I'm the founder of BioUtah, Utah, and I'm interested in creating customized products for my clients and patients, and eventually 3D printing based on their electronic medical records. And is there anything in the FDA that is looking at a unified digital health record for the United States? Like the chicken and the egg, like how are we going to build out all this AI if we don't have a protected health data system that could be accessed by all these programs? So I want to know what the FDA is thinking about, because I think that's a critical part to this whole technology.
I think you've hit on a really important point, which is data, and how do we make data accessible and integrated so that it can be informative in various different parts of either the device development process or in assessing the real-world performance of a particular technology. It's one of the things that it's not just an FDA topic. Obviously, the electronic health records are the Office of the National Coordinator now, ASTP, that's where that kind of work sits. There's CMS that plays an important role about data and what kind of information is collected in the variants of care. So I think that it really is going to require a collaborative approach to determining what are the features of the data, what data needs to be structured in order for it to be useful, to inform some of the applications that we'd like to use, and then looking at data quality. Not all data is able to answer all questions, and so it's important that the data is relevant to the question of interest and that it's reliable so that it can be used in a way that can inform decision making, whether it's a regulator's decision, a clinical provider's decision, a patient's decision, or a payer's decision. Those are some of the conversations we are having. We're having them across the department, and because we recognize that that's going to be critical as we are thinking about the data sets on which some of these devices are going to learn and be trained. That's going to be important.
I just had one other segue, but do you think it's important that Americans have health records regardless if they have health insurance? That they would be somewhere digitally tracked so that they could be helped if they were in between healthcare insurance companies, because right now it's very based on what provider people have.
I think electronic health records are a challenging space, obviously outside the realm of FDA because we don't regulate health records. But I will say that it's important for people to have the information they need so that it can facilitate great care. And whatever vehicle that takes, I think that there are a lot of folks that are kind of weighing in on this and opining on it that are much more informed on the electronic health record side than we at the FDA are.
Thank you for taking my questions.
The speaker just before this talked about AI and made the comment that companies that aren't moving at the speed of AI run the risk of becoming irrelevant. So one of the questions is, what is FDA doing to incorporate AI into your internal processes? We all know there's issues about how it's going to be regulated. How is it being used internally at FDA?
Yeah, I think that there's always been, obviously some early adopters who've been looking at AI, whether it's ChatGPT or OpenAI and other platforms. But now, as of June, we have our own internal AI-enabled platform, which is called ELSA. That platform actually sits behind a firewall. It's not connected to the internet, but it is a useful resource that many reviewers are starting to leverage, whether it is to upload portions of a file. Now, granted, it stays still within FDA. It's not going into any other internet space, just locally, but upload it and then can find the important information it's looking for. We're using it to identify what guidance documents and summarizing some of those guidance documents that may be important at the time of the review. It's also helping us identify whether there's inconsistencies within a file so that we can look and say, well, this table and this table don't match. So we can ask the right questions as part of our deficiency. So it's a tool that we're using to help us summarize information, identify important information. It is not doing reviews. I think that was a misconception that folks may have had. It's not doing the reviews for us, but it is helping us to identify information, cutting time off of cutting the time down from what it takes for us to do our reviews, because a lot of time is spent searching for information, and this creates a more efficient approach to doing that.
So you don't see anytime soon having bots doing the review of applications?
I don't see it anytime soon. I think that probably if you ask a lot of companies, they're saying, that's down the road for a little bit. And it's important to keep that human in the loop.
Okay, great. Another question.
Dr. Tarver, my name's Dave Hanneman with CuraVit. I have a general question for you. I'm very interested in the F in FDA, and I know there's been an increased focus in that area. So what initiatives, if any, have you seen in the last year coming out of the FDA that support the F side or focus on the food side? And then specifically to this audience, do you see any areas of opportunity for innovators and entrepreneurs in areas like health span, wellness, and longevity?
So I'm not representing the food space, so I can't speak to a lot of the specifics with respect to some of the efforts around foods. I'll just make one small comment. There was a significant effort taken earlier this year to remove some of the colorants in food, and so that is something I think that had a significant impact. But there's a lot happening, obviously, in the food space that my colleague Kyle Diamantis, who is running the Human Foods Program, would probably be best equipped to address. I think with respect to the question you raised around, sorry, I'm trying to remember your second question.
Hey,
Would you mind
Dave,
repeating?
come back to the microphone and ask the second question about how companies can.
Yeah, sorry. And specifically in our space, we are seeing a lot of interest in clinical trials in the longevity, wellness, and health span area. And that's intersecting with things like digital therapeutics and other types of more traditional therapeutics. So I'm curious where you see the opportunities there.
No, in terms of, obviously we don't really have a lot of oversight on wellness devices. We do see an opportunity for some of those devices to play a role in clinical trials, remote clinical trials. And we've done some research studies with various academic centers to help generate evidence that can support that it actually measures the concept that's important within that clinical trial. In fact, we've done a study with Mayo that looked at oncology patients and whether or not the Fitbit or Gorman tracker or other kind of activity tracker could actually give an insight to how that patient was doing longitudinally, and could it potentially replace some of the data that was being collected in the clinical visits. And those are the types of things that we are exploring. There's a guidance document that we have with respect to remote conduct of clinical trials and the use of these technologies in those clinical trials. They don't have to be authorized, obviously, by the FDA in order to be used in that way. So, we are very much encouraging folks to consider those options and to explore the utilization of certain devices that may be more in the wellness sphere, but could potentially be a useful adjunct in the collection of data remotely for clinical studies.
Thank you.
Have time for one more question.
Hi, Dr. Tarver. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Lars Moritz, and I'm with Avendium, a regulatory and quality consulting group. And my question sort of goes back to the topic of AI. And is there, I guess in the industry, there's been some discussions about the possibility of the agency using AI tools to help with inspections, regulatory type inspections. So is there any sort of plan on the docket for doing that?
We are looking at whether there are different approaches. I mean, innovation isn't limited just to the technologies that we regulate. Innovation can also be in the methods and the approaches that we use to conduct our functions. And so I think you're touching on an important area. We're looking at the use of remote audits and other approaches that potentially could leverage different uses of technology to help us do our work. I know during the public health emergency, we leveraged a lot more remote evaluations of manufacturing facilities, and whether or not we can continue to expand on that with some reassurance that we're getting the information we need to ensure that products are high quality and safe is important. So we are exploring all applications that we could potentially leverage to create some optimization and efficiencies in all of our processes, including our inspection and investigations.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Tarver, I want to wind up with just 2 or 3 quick questions. Number one, companies say that they are advised often that if they're having trouble with a reviewer, they should just bite their tongue, because if they go over the reviewer's head, it's going to come back to bite them. What is your response to that?
I would say, please, please, please reach out to a reviewer first. Oftentimes we find that there is maybe some miscommunication that's the source of the challenge, and some assumptions that you may assume are shared may not be shared. So I encourage you to explain and seek to see if you can clarify it with that reviewer. If that doesn't work, please do reach out to the next level supervisor, whether it's a division director or office director, depending on where the challenge might be. We are looking to see if we can help facilitate a reconciliation of those particular challenges. So raise your hand, elevate it, and escalate it as appropriate.
That's probably even more true with the hiring of a lot of new staff. That kind of feedback could actually be helpful.
Absolutely.
One other quick question, global harmonization. Any progress on global harmonization?
No, CDRH has really been working a lot in the global harmonization space with respect to the International Medical Device Regulators Forum. In fact, we were the chair in 2024. We onboarded about 7 new affiliate members during our chairship, and we have been working on documents, our shared guidance documents at the IMDRF level on a number of different topics, whether it's digital health and other different practices in that space, cybersecurity, et cetera. The other thing that we're also doing is part of the MDSAP effort. We're helping to promote the use of accredited third-party auditing organizations to help perform some of these manufacturing inspections. And we're going to be the chair of MDSAP in 2026 and 2027. And so these efforts combined, as well as bilateral efforts that we have with Health Canada, MHRA, TGA, and others in Brazil, are helping us to usher in more reliance pathways for medical devices.
Great. So last question. What do you like about your job?
I will say I love 2 things about my job. One, the mission. You've heard me say it multiple times already. It really is the inspiration. I'm a clinician. I'm an epidemiologist. I've done other jobs. This one, helping to protect and promote public health, is truly the fuel in my engine. The other thing that I love about my job is the people that work beside me. They are very, very talented, very, very skilled, very intelligent individuals who also share that same value of commitment to public health. And they are always willing to roll up their sleeves, work long hours, and try to get things to goal that they believe will help protect and promote public health. So those 2 things, the people and the mission, are truly what drives us.
I had to ask that question because, very frankly, someone of your credentials, your capabilities, could do so well in the private sector, and yet you choose to be a public servant like this. We thank you for what you are doing. We appreciate you being here today. Very much appreciate the information that you've shared.
Thank you very much.